From London, the National Broadcasting Company presents War Telescope, a review of the war week and a forecast of possible developments to come. War Telescope features Elmer Peterson of NBC's London staff, a veteran reporter of the European scene. And now for his regular Saturday report, we take you now to London.
This is Elmer Peterson in London. Just a few hours ago here in London, we had a really impressive announcement about the air war against Germany. The announcement that more than 800 American heavy bombers with fighter plane escorts today penetrated deep into southwest Germany to attack targets at Frankfurt. It was the greatest single target attack in the history of this war. In the number of planes attacking a single target, it reflects the enormous growth and development of American daylight bombing in this theater. For it's understood that hundreds of escorting fighters went along, so many that it's possible that 1,800 planes participated altogether. It means that a small army of young Americans today used their skill and courage and determination in an attack on Germany. It means that the 8th Air Force, just starting its third year as an organized unit, is now striking blows such as the Germans never imagined possible, hitting its specialized targets which the Luftwaffe must defend at a price the Luftwaffe finds it increasingly difficult to pay. Now, full details of today's raids are still lacking. However, if each of the flying forts and liberators carried 2 tons of bombs apiece, it can be assumed that some 1,600 tons of bombs went crashing down on Frankfurt, a total which measures up well with the loads being carried by the RAF on their big night operations. The returning crews reported that opposition was light in some instances, vigorous in others, but that on the whole the raid was carried out smoothly and effectively. Some of the crews reported they could see smoke rising above the overcast by the time they arrived over the target. NBC correspondent Ed Hawker was at one of the American bases when the planes returned from this great and concentrated attack. It was, Hawker told me by telephone a few minutes ago, an exceptionally dramatic and exciting scene, hearing the returning airman's own version of the tremendous size of this raid. All the planes returned safely at the base he was visiting, Hawker reported. The airmen Hawker talked to said they saw very little flak and no more than 50 German fighter planes. In fact, they said opposition in the air was light. Apparently, one gunner told Hawker, our fighter protection was so effective, it kept most of the enemy planes below cloud cover. What this raid has done is to put new emphasis on what's going to be achieved during the coming months by Allied air forces here in Britain. For what must be kept firmly in mind these days is that the Germans are fighting desperately for time now. Time to find ways and means of prolonging the war and winning some sort of compromise peace. Time to pull back from their disastrous venture into Russia and concentrate on blocking the invasion of Western Europe. But these steady and shattering raids on Berlin and other German cities provide a factor that Germans must control or they won't get the time they need. From all accounts, the Germans hope to prolong the war throughout this year on the theory that this will give them time to find a way out through their hoped-for complications in Allied military and political strategies. But they can only do this by defending their war production centers, especially their fighter plane factories. They've concentrated their best fighter plane squadrons for this purpose. They're matching their production of fighter planes and their reserves of fighter planes against the great smashing blows such as they received today, and they're losing. The other day, Lieutenant General Karl Spass, commanding officer of American strategic air forces in Europe, said that 40% of Germany's planned fighter plane strength has now been destroyed. There will always be discussion, of course, about the extent to which the Allied air forces are contributing to victory in Europe, and there will never be any real way of measuring that contribution. But we do have more and more reason to believe that these air raids on Germany are doing more than merely destroying German war potential and organization. They're also building up a reason why the German High Command will have to admit defeat. A reason which, and it's a danger that must be guarded against, the German High Command will welcome. In preference, that is, to admitting complete defeat in land warfare. What the 8th Air Force and RAF are hitting at now is the very core and kernel of German willingness and ability to muster a complete and solid defense against invasion of Western Europe. Here in Britain, it's impressive these days to watch American soldiers preparing for their tasks in the important days to come. And not only their prescribed preparations, the things they must do. As you meet and observe these modern American soldiers over here, you're impressed by a variety of things. There is, for the example, the matter of their voluntary interest in foreign languages, something for which they're being given every facility. Personally, I've been amazed to learn the extent of the interest being shown in this. In fact, wherever American soldiers are stationed, you'll find these voluntary study groups, for which the Special Services Unit provides help and guidance. The languages being studied include German, Spanish, Italian, French, and Russian. It's a remarkable thing in many ways. You can look in on a Red Cross club at an airfield or the library of an army base and see a group of young Americans busy with textbooks and busy with specially arranged phonograph records, learning a language in the most scientific manner possible and learning it because they want to. You can see an American boy who never had a chance to study a foreign language at home, a boy who never would have thought of studying a foreign language, perhaps, but who now spends a certain amount of his time in getting the twists and turns of a new medium of conveying thought and ideas. There are a number of reasons, it seems, for this interest in foreign language study. For one thing, I'm told many an American soldier recognizes that he can be better equipped as a soldier if he can speak and read a language other than his own. He realizes a most obvious fact, namely that under certain circumstances, whether of attack or occupation of a country, the soldier who knows something besides English may be worth two men. Another reason, of course, is a natural desire for learning. In some cases, it provides a diversion, an interesting hobby. But the outstanding reason seems to be that many an American soldier has some imagination about his possible future task. He feels that before this war is over, he may be seeing some new countries, and that he might as well get ready for that. At any rate, many of you people at home are going to welcome back soldiers who will be able to trot out some correct conversation in foreign speech, and something not learned from a tourist phrase book. Most of this teaching is being done with the use of phonograph records, and 70% or so of the men studying in this manner are enlisted men. To provide some evidence of all this, if you need evidence, here are two soldier students, Corporal Varner Paulson of Brooklyn and Corporal John McNamara of New York City. Both have studied some French in high school. Both have continued their studies over here. Corporal Paulson, why are you, for example, studying a foreign language over here in Britain?
Why? Because it's so obvious to me now that some knowledge of a foreign language is going to be important in the future. I've got a new ambition to see something of Europe, for one thing.
What about you, Corporal McNamara?
My reasons are pretty much the same. I did study some French in high school, but I promptly forgot most of it. Over here, I've gotten a new interest in languages. I'm brushing up on French now, but I hope to study some other languages as well.
Well, supposing you and Corporal Paulson show us that you really can handle a foreign language.
Well, it may be a bit rough, but here goes. Varner, est-ce la première fois que vous visitez Londres?
Oui, c'est la première fois.
Aimez-vous Londres?
Oui, naturellement. Tout le monde ici est très gentil pour nous.
Où irons-nous ce soir?
Il vous plaira. Pour moi, cela m'est absolument égal.
Eh bien, allons au théâtre.
Well, that convinces me, and it should convince you who are listening, that we're getting an army that can take care of itself most anywhere. All that Corporals Paulson and McNamara had to say today in that little dialogue is that they like London, it's their first visit here, and they plan on going to the theater. But they could say a lot more. More and more here in London, I find myself interested in the part the people of the occupied countries of Europe are going to play in the final battle of Europe. It's something that appeals to my imagination, partly because of the tremendous and complicated scope of this coming activity, and partly from a personal view of my own memories and experience in this war. For this island of Britain is far more now than the assembly point for the Anglo-American forces of invasion. It's also the center of contact, the grand plotting room, you might say, for the millions of people of the occupied countries of Europe. People who now think of deliverance in terms of months and not years. Scattered around London are the various governments in exile. Training for their appointed task are the military units of the various occupied countries. In buildings where you can feel this new tension and expectancy, experts of all kinds are at work, as they have been at work for 4 years and more. You can talk to these people now and get the impression somehow of a giant lacework of contact with the continent of Europe, for the passing back and forth of information and instruction. It's one of the fascinating things about London, these impressions of how much has been achieved in preparation for the great drive for victory. The other day, for example, I met a Polish government official, a man I hadn't seen since some unforgettable days in September 1940. I saw him last on a highway leading out of Warsaw. Behind us, the city was being bombed unmercifully, a city still fighting gallantly and courageously. All around us on the highway was a confusing whirlpool of refugees, soldiers, peasant carts, and trucks. As a part of this scene, Polish officials and experts, the men now working here in London, were on their way to keep the Polish government going. They left their country to continue their work outside Poland. But there were many Poles, as there have been many Frenchmen, Norwegians, Dutch, who could have left their respective countries, but who did not leave. Not only because they had no chance to leave, but because they felt their duty was to remain. There was a Polish woman whom I helped to leave Warsaw. But when our party was halfway to Romania in safety, This Polish patriot changed her mind. He simply said to me quietly, "I was wrong to leave Warsaw. I had a moment of panic, but it was a mistake to yield to it. I must go back where I belong." As I recall it now, it was a strange experience watching that Polish woman change her mind and go back into that hell of flame and fury that Warsaw became. Yes, it's these sort of thoughts and memories that impress you greatly here in London now. It's very easy, after all, to get into the habit of thinking of the coming invasion as an Anglo-American affair, forgetting that it's going to be a United Nations affair. There isn't much that can be said about the preparations now being perfected, but there's one point that may emphasize the matter. You must remember that invasion of Western Europe means more than spearheads of highly trained and perfectly equipped frontline soldiers. It means also a vast group of men and women who will work in the rear of these frontline soldiers on matters of supply and communication. And it's for such things as these that the people of the occupied countries have been preparing, among other things. Preparing according to definite and detailed plans and under conditions of oppression and persecution. There are political complications about the extent of the resistance that may be put up against the Germans in some cases. Certainly the Germans would like to have us believe that they have been able to prevent a great deal of the necessary organization. Still, the simple fact remains that the military assistance from the occupied countries of Western Europe is going to be an important factor in the final defeat of Germany. But this is only one of the things that makes you reflect now on the great and profound changes that have occurred since this war began. It's about 3.5 years now since Prime Minister Churchill delivered one of his famous radio broadcasts to the British people. "We wait undismayed the impending assault," said Churchill on July 14, 1940. "Perhaps it will come tonight. Perhaps it will come next week. Perhaps it will never come." This same mood and atmosphere is with us now here in Britain, although the circumstances have changed vastly. Once again, the British people are getting set for an assault against this country when the Germans try their final desperate measures to block the invasion of Western Europe. We're getting open warnings here now of what we can expect when the tide of Allied land, sea, and air power flows across the English Channel. Warnings that the Germans may try anything and everything to disrupt invasion operations on this side of the English Channel, through airborne suicide squadrons that will try to sabotage transport facilities in this country, through large-scale air raids, possibly through the weapon of poison gas. But this is a Britain, remember, that has progressed far from those days of 1940. Out of these years of preparing for attack, there also has come a new defense machinery for this island. Whatever the Germans try, they will not succeed, although they may still cause a great deal of trouble. Another change that you sense here in Britain now is the manner in which events are providing the Allies with definite political advantage. One report here today is that Britain may now take parallel action against Franco, following the United States ban on oil shipments to that country. It's assumed that this would involve a suspension of wheat and coal supplies to Spain from British sources, supplies highly important to Spain. It's something that would help impress on the Spaniards, and impress very deeply, the poor rewards of their policy up to now. This is Elmer Peterson in London, saying goodbye on this program until this time next week.
You have been listening to War Telescope, a weekly report on the war as seen from London by Elmer Peterson, NBC's veteran observer in the British capital. Mr. Peterson is presented each Saturday at this same time over most of these stations, and today he had as his guests Corporal Paulson and Corporal McNamara of the United States Armed Forces, speaking on studying languages in the Army. So be with us again next Saturday at this same time for another edition of War Telescope. This program came to you from London and New York. This is the National Broadcasting Company.